George Russell picked up his first podium for Mercedes in Australia and celebrated by saying how Mercedes were the 5th fastest team overall over the course of the weekend. They were still miles off the Red Bulls and Ferraris and had massive issues over the course of the weekend that they still needed to get to the bottom of. So not the happiest of podiums from George Russell, and Lewis Hamilton even insinuating himself that at this moment in time, Mercedes are just trying to pick up points where they possibly can because they know that they're not going to be able to get anywhere close to the Red Bulls or the Ferraris. So both Mercedes drivers still not 100% happy in the car. And actually, you can see that over the course of the race, the Mercedes is dropping off the back of Charles Leclerc continually throughout the entirety of it. Obviously, we had the safety car in the middle there, which brings them a little bit closer. But even in the second half of the race, you can see the Mercedes dropping off the back of the Ferrari. I thought, though, it was interesting. If you look at the individual lap times for each car, the Mercedes gets closer to matching the Red Bull. Specifically in the second half of the race, you can see the Mercedes getting a lot closer to the pace of the Red Bull, and that's a definite step forward for me in terms of Mercedes pacing overall. And just to touch on George Russell saying that they're the 5th fastest, adding in the Alpines and McLarens to this, if you look at Alpines and McLaren's times, they were way off the back of the Mercedes. I think he was being a little bit exaggerative. I know that we saw the Alpine being very quick in qualifying, but in terms of race pace, the Mercedes still had them beat. And obviously, at this moment in time, Mercedes do sit second in the Constructors' Championship. So why are they still so negative, and why are they still so unsure of what they're going to be able to do in the 2022 season? Now, everybody talks about porpoising. That is the word that is talked about most in terms of Mercedes and in terms of Formula One. This is the Google Trends for porpoising. Effectively, nobody used the word porpoising between the words 2004 and 2022, and then it skyrockets because of this new Formula One season, which I thought was hilarious. But this porpoising has been talked about with Mercedes over the course of the entire season and pre-season as well. But actually, I thought it was quite interesting that the team that struggled most with porpoising in Australia was Ferrari. Charles Leclerc was actually the one porpoising the most on the final straight, and actually said himself that it was quite tricky to even handle the Ferrari at points because of the bouncing that he had from the car at that sort of back end of the circuit towards Sector 3. So how come Ferrari can get away with porpoising in this way? How come Ferrari can porpoise and be the fastest car on the grid, and yet Mercedes blame all of their problems on this porpoising and seemingly can't get close to the Ferraris, which are actually having more of an issue with it? Well, it seems that it's slightly more complicated than just the bouncing up and down that Mercedes are letting on. Obviously, they are still losing time because of the porpoising, but everybody on the grid is losing time because of the porpoising at this moment in time. But it seems to affect the Mercedes the most out of all the cars on the grid. And many teams at this point still don't 100% know where the porpoising is coming from. The sort of main area that we're thinking it's coming from at the moment is from the cars grounding out, hitting on the back of the car and actually bouncing up on the suspension. And because they're bouncing up on the suspension is put out of whack. It then links into the ground effect underneath the car. That's trying to pull the car back down, but then it's pushing it back up on the suspension. Basically, it causes that bouncing that we're seeing. So the way that most teams are getting around this, and Mercedes in particular are having to get around this, is by lifting the car up off the track a little bit. And now, this is where it gets really bad for Mercedes in particular because of the way that Mercedes have designed their aerodynamics. Obviously, with the ground effect coming in this year, you want the grounding of your car to be as close to the floor as possible. You want that car to be set up in a way where you can continually have it at the same height, so you know exactly what the ground effect is going to do in every single track. And at the moment, Mercedes just aren't able to do that. Because of their design, they're having to lift the car up, which is causing massive issues for their aerodynamics and also the suspension at the back of the car. It means that that bouncing up and down is lessened because the car is higher up, is less likely to hit into the ground and therefore cause that porpoising to start to begin with. But it is also causing massive downforce issues and massive stability issues. Even talking of Lewis Hamilton in Saudi Arabia is the main one, right? They lifted the car up massively in Saudi Arabia. They had to because of the way that the track was so high speed, and it just caused Lewis Hamilton to have no grip, effectively not know what the car was going to be able to do, and he qualified in 16th place because of it. And that lifting up of the car is causing them more issues than just the porpoising itself. The fundamentals, though, Mercedes say they are happy with. They say they are happy with the zero pods, the way that the side pods are designed on the Ferrari, the way that the floor is designed on the Mercedes, sorry. They say that they are most happy with, and they stand behind those fundamentals that they have, and they think it is going to work. And if it's Mercedes, it kind of makes you think that they will find a way to make it work and that they will get this bouncing under control at some point. But as I said, I don't think the bouncing is the only issue that Mercedes have got. It's definitely affecting them more than everybody else, but I think the power unit is also at play here. We've got to remember, Mercedes came in to the 2021 season as the power unit to have. We had McLaren move over, Aston Martin picked up Mercedes. We also have Williams with a Mercedes power unit as well. It was the team that you wanted to be linked with in terms of their power unit. And suddenly they've gone from the best power unit on the grid to the worst power unit on the grid, which makes me think there's two possible reasons what's happened with the Mercedes power unit. First of all, the new regulations have come in and there is a new fuel in 2022 called the E10 fuel. So maybe the power unit just doesn't work as well with the new compound of fuel that Formula One are using in this new season. And the regulation changes have caused that Mercedes engine to just be down a little bit on where it was before. Or what I think might be happening at Mercedes is because they know they've got these issues with the porpoising, with the aero of the car, and they know that that is quite a simple fix once they can get to the bottom of, how the suspension can act in various different circuits, and they will get to the point where they get that under control and the ground effect then comes into fruition a little bit more for them. Obviously with the zero pod idea, that's less drag that they've got to deal with over the course of the season as well, and they've got the new wing coming as very soon as well. So the Mercedes is gonna get quicker in terms of its aerodynamics, and they're gonna get to the bottom of this porpoising over the course of the season. I therefore think the Mercedes might be gearing their engine down just a little bit, just taking the edge off the engine whilst they get to the bottom of some of those other issues. And it makes sense because we've seen reliability issues all the way up and down the grid so far. Red Bull in particular, with their new Red Bull Honda powertrain, whichever one you want to go for, is having massive issues right now, and it just can't seem to get working. We've seen Max Verstappen DNF from 2 races, whereas Lewis Hamilton and George Russell have finished every single one. You even look at Alpine, for instance, with their Renault engine. They are also really struggling. Fernando Alonso has taken 3 out of his possible 3 engines for 2022 already. So there's going to be big drops in their performance over the course of the year because they are not going to be able to go from, I know that they can use those engines again, but there's got to be issues in those engines as to why they've decided to change over again in all 3 races. So I personally think that Mercedes might be gearing down just for reliability a little bit, not turning the engine up to maximum, because we've seen that you can come back towards the end of a season. Remember, Mercedes in 2021 turned up with 5 or 6 races left to go with a brand new engine setup. Bottas was changing his engine every single weekend while they was trying to get it right. And suddenly they were the best car on the grid by a mile. Look at Lewis Hamilton in Brazil. He went past people like they were standing still because Mercedes brought that new power unit. It was a huge upgrade, and suddenly they were the fastest car on the grid again. Faster than the Red Bull that obviously went on to win the championship. Yes, but Mercedes were able to win that Constructors' Championship, in my opinion, because of that engine upgrade that they brought with 6 races left to go. Now, I think they might be waiting for that opportunity. I can't see how this engine has gone from the best of the best to absolutely nowhere without there being something behind the scenes which they're maybe coming to grips with and maybe just gearing down the engine to try and wait for those other issues. This could be the peak of Ferrari. This could be the peak of Red Bull. I assume that Ferrari's going to get quicker, and I assume that Red Bull's going to get quicker as well, but we don't know that for sure. This could be the absolute top pace that Ferrari has over the course of the entire season. And with that, Ferrari may not be able to find those extra attempts, which I think Mercedes do definitely have at their disposal. My argument is, I think it would be too late in terms of the championships by the time that Mercedes get to the bottom of these issues, fix their porpoising, fix their suspension, make sure the aero does actually work in the way that they want it to, for them to challenge for titles. I think they'll be too far behind Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz in terms of the drivers and the constructors by the time they get these aero issues and porpoising issues fixed. But I do think they will go on to win races towards the end of the season. And that means they will have a huge factor in terms of taking points off Ferrari, taking points off Red Bull, and possibly causing headaches towards the end of the season for those two teams. And I think that is where it gets very interesting for Mercedes. This Mercedes team, over the past decade, have been by far and away the best outfit behind the scenes, right? They have always been impressive behind the scenes. They've always bought upgrades and they've always managed to work. Like we look at the 2017, 2018, even the 2019, 2020, 21 seasons where they've been battling with other teams and they've been able to come up on top with the Constructors' Championship every single time. Like behind the scenes, Mercedes are just aiming at the moon and everybody else is just one step behind generally. Now, that is going to be completely different in 2022, but I still believe Mercedes have the right engineers and they will fix that problem. I think when we get to Miami and possibly moving into the sort of Spain leg towards that European stint up until maybe even the summer break and after the summer break, I think we're going to see a brand new Mercedes. And I think Mercedes are going to be right up there battling for the top positions. You know, they wanted a new wing in Saudi Arabia. That didn't come. It's very difficult to get parts all the way across the world for a brand new wing. Similar in Australia, they decided not to bring too many upgrades because, again, it's the complete other side of the world. And they knew that they could just, you know, play damage limitations for a weekend or two. I think they know they've got a huge opportunity at the end of the season to make massive steps forward and possibly be the team again in 2023. But that's just my thoughts. I honestly think that they're going to get to the bottom of this porpoising. I think that the porpoising issues that they have will be overcome. And actually, I think they'll overcome it before some of the other teams because they're affected by it so much. And because they've had to change their car's aero so much to deal with the porpoising, it's, you know, in their best interest to get that done as soon as possible. Whereas other teams have other issues in various different places. We're looking at Red Bull probably trying to get their power unit sorted first, right? Ferrari maybe also probably working on the porpoising. They seem to have had pretty easy season of it overall in the Ferrari garage so far. But I think once we get to Europe, once we get to the summer break and beyond that, Mercedes are a huge team to watch. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Where do you think Mercedes will end up in the Constructors this year? I think it'll be a little bit too late for them to battle right for the top spot, but I think they're going to be right up there and possibly putting pressure on in the second half of the season. But we'll have to wait and see. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Oh.